The porch light was burned out again. I remember thinking that, of all things, as I climbed the steps of my own house on a Tuesday evening in September, briefcase in one hand, a bag of Thai takeout in the other, because it was Marigold's favorite, and I hadn't brought her flowers in longer than I cared to admit. 22 years of marriage does that to a man. You stop bringing flowers. You start bringing pad CU and calling it romance. Rosa was standing on the top step before I even reached it. Rosa, our housekeeper for the last 6 years, a woman who called me Mr. Daniel in a soft Salvadoran accent, and who I trusted enough to hand her a key to my house, and, some days, more of my secrets than my own wife. She wasn't holding a broom or a laundry basket. She was holding the door shut with her own body, one hand flat against the wood, like she was bracing against a storm that hadn't arrived yet. "Don't go home," she whispered. I actually laughed. I thought she was joking, some kind of tired after a long day humor. "Rosa, I am home," I said, lifting the takeout bag like it was proof of something. "Long day. I just want to sit down and eat with my wife." She didn't laugh back. Her eyes were wet, and she looked at me the way you look at someone standing at the edge of a rooftop, not sure whether to grab them or let them find out for themselves. "Please," she said, "not tonight, Mr. Daniel." And that's when I heard it. Through the door, muffled but unmistakable, my wife's voice. Laughing. Not the polite laugh she gave at dinner parties. Not the tired laugh she gave when I told a joke about my knees or my blood pressure. This was a different laugh. Lower, warmer. The kind of laugh I hadn't heard directed at me in years. And I felt something in my chest drop the way an elevator drops when the cable snaps. That sick lurch of gravity taken over before you even understand what's happening. Then a man's voice answered her. Deep, familiar, in a way I couldn't place yet, but familiar enough that the hair on my arms stood up. I stood there on my own porch, in front of my own door, holding takeout that was getting cold in a bag that suddenly felt like it weighed 40 pounds, and everything just stopped. 22 years. 2 kids raised, both grown and gone now. A mortgage paid off 8 months ago that we'd celebrated with cheap champagne in the backyard. 22 years of Sunday mornings and tax season arguments, and her hand finding mine in movie theaters even after all this time. And all of it froze right there in that 1 second, hanging in the air like a held breath, because some part of me already knew, before I even turned the doorknob, that I was about to walk into the exact moment my entire life split in half. Before I tell you what I found on the other side of that door, subscribe to this channel and tell me in the comments where you're watching from tonight. I read every single one. My name is Daniel. And what happened in the next 10 minutes wasn't just the end of my marriage. It was the beginning of something my wife never saw coming. 22 years I'd been married to Marigold, and for almost all of them, her family had a particular way of looking at me, not with hatred. Hatred would have required effort. It was something quieter than that, a kind of practiced indifference. The way you look past a coat rack in a hallway you've walked through 1,000 times. Her mother, Estelle, called me the accountant for the first decade, even after I corrected her twice. Her father, Warwick, used to introduce me at parties as Marigold's husband. He does something with numbers, and then turn back to whoever he'd been talking to before I'd finished shaking his hand. I let it happen. I let it happen for years, because there is a strange peace in being underestimated, if you know how to use it. What none of them knew, what I had never once volunteered, not at Thanksgiving, not at Warwick's 60th birthday, not even in the quiet hours after Marigold and I made love and lay in the dark talking about nothing, was what I actually did behind the door of that gray office building downtown, the one with no sign, just a suite number and a keypad lock. I wasn't an accountant. I was a corporate risk investigator, the kind companies hire when they suspect something is rotting inside their own walls and they can't yet say what. I had spent 2 decades learning how to read a person the way most people read a paragraph. The hesitation before a lie. The too quick confidence of someone hiding a debt. The particular stillness of a man who has done something he hopes never surfaces. I had built relationships with men who owed me favors they'd rather forget. Women in compliance departments who trusted my name more than their own supervisors, a retired federal judge who still took my calls on a Sunday morning without asking why. I never talked about it at home, partly because the work demanded discretion, real discretion, the kind with consequences if broken, and partly because, if I'm honest, I liked the quiet. I liked coming home to a house where nobody asked me to perform. Marigold used to joke that I was married to my briefcase, and I let her believe the briefcase held spreadsheets, not case files on men who thought their money made them invisible. So when Warwick would say, over Sunday roast, "Real shame you never made partner somewhere, Desmond, with your head for figures," I would just nod and pass the potatoes. When Estelle implied, gently, always gently, the way people twist a knife, slowly so it doesn't look like twisting, that Marigold could have done better, I let the words settle into the tablecloth and disappear. It cost me nothing to be small in their eyes. It cost me nothing because I had never needed their approval to know what I was capable of. But there's a particular danger in being underestimated for too long. People start to believe their own fiction about you. They start to act as though the version of you they've invented is the only version that exists. And they build their plans, their cruelties, their small betrayals, on top of that fiction like it's solid ground. That Tuesday evening, climbing the porch steps with Thai takeout, going lukewarm in the bag, I still believed I was simply a tired husband coming home to his wife. I didn't yet know that somewhere in that house, a decision had already been made about me, one built entirely on the assumption that I was exactly who they thought I was. I was about to learn how wrong that assumption could be. The porch light thing had been happening for 3 weeks now. I kept replacing the bulb, and it kept dying. And I told myself it was faulty wiring, because that was easier than asking why the one light that let me see my own front door kept going dark right around the time Marigold started working late. I want to be honest about something. I notice things. I notice them the way you notice a crack in a windshield. Small, in the corner of your vision, easy to convince yourself will hold. There was the credit card statement in July, a charge from a boutique hotel, 40 minutes north of the city, $340, dated a Wednesday, when Marigold told me she was at a conference in Albany. I remember staring at that line item for a long time, and then I remember doing the thing I'd gotten so good at doing. I closed the laptop. I told myself it was a work retreat. I told myself a lot of things that summer. There was the phone, too. Marigold had always left it face up on the kitchen counter, screen unlocked half the time. the way people do when they've got nothing to hide. Sometime in June, that changed. She started carrying it into the bathroom when she showered. She started sleeping with it under her pillow, instead of on the nightstand. Small thing. I told myself people get more private as they get older. I told myself 22 years buys you the benefit of the doubt. And then there was Rosa. Rosa had been our housekeeper for 6 years. A quiet, careful woman who kept our house running better than either of us deserved, who knew where every spare key was hidden and which of our towels Marigold liked folded a certain way. Rosa didn't gossip. Rosa didn't comment. That was what made the last 2 months so strange, because Rosa had started watching me. Not staring, nothing so obvious. But I'd catch her eyes on me in the hallway, and they'd dart away fast, the way a person looks away when they've just watched something bad happen and don't know whether to say anything. Once, in early August, I asked her if everything was all right, and she said, "Yes, Mr. Whitmore," too quickly, too brightly, and went back to dusting a shelf that was already clean. Then there were the nights Marigold came home late, later than a work dinner should run, smelling faintly of a cologne that wasn't mine, hair slightly damp like she'd rushed a shower somewhere else before walking through our door. I'd ask how her evening was. She'd say, "Fine, long day," and kiss my cheek, and go upstairs, and I'd sit at the kitchen table with my chest tight and my mind working overtime to talk myself down from a ledge I didn't want to look off of. I told myself I was being paranoid. I told myself 22 years of marriage doesn't just erode overnight, that people don't wake up one day and decide to become strangers to you. I told myself Rosa's nervousness was about something else entirely, a family matter, immigration paperwork, anything but what my gut kept whispering it might be. Looking back now, from where I'm standing, I can see how much I was choosing not to see. Every excuse I built for Marigold, every reason I invented for Rosa's darting eyes, every late night I let slide. I built those myself, brick by brick, because the alternative was a version of my life I wasn't ready to walk into. That Tuesday, in September, with the takeout bag warm against my palm and the porch light dead above me, I was still telling myself the story where everything was fine. I didn't know I had about 90 seconds left to believe it. I want to tell you I hesitated, because I'm a careful man. The truth is simpler. I hesitated because some animal part of me already knew, and knowing is a door you can't close again once it's open. Consuela stood on the porch in her coat, key still in her hand like she'd been about to leave before I pulled into the driveway. She'd worked for us 11 years. She'd seen my kids take their first steps, lose their first teeth, cry over first breakups on that same porch swing. In 11 years, she had never once told me what to do in my own home. "Mr. Whitfield," she said, and her voice had a tremor in it I'd never heard before. "Don't go home. Not tonight. Please." I asked her what she meant. She wouldn't look at me. She looked at the bag of Thai food in my hand, like it was evidence of something. Like I was a man walking toward a car crash, carrying flowers for the other driver. "The kids are at my sister's," she said. "I took them there myself 2 hours ago." That should have stopped me cold. It didn't. I climbed the last 2 steps anyway, because 22 years of marriage builds a kind of stupid faith in you. A faith that insists there's an explanation. There's always an explanation, right up until there isn't. The front door was unlocked. I remember that detail clearly, because Marigold was religious about locking doors, bolts, chains, the whole ritual, every night since her sister's house got broken into back in 2009. An unlocked door in our house was its own kind of confession. The living room was empty, but I could hear voices from upstairs, low and unhurried, the particular ease of people who believe themselves alone. I climbed the stairs still holding the takeout bag, which is a strange thing to notice about yourself in a moment like that. But the mind grabs onto whatever it can when it's trying not to fall apart. The bedroom door was cracked open. I saw my wife's hand first, resting on the collar of a shirt I recognized. Pale blue with a faint check pattern. A shirt I'd seen 100 times across barbecue grills and poker tables, because it belonged to Desmond Cole, my college roommate, the best man at our wedding, the man who'd held my son the day he was born, because I'd been stuck in a delayed flight from Denver. I didn't say anything. I don't think I could have. I stood in that hallway for what felt like an hour, but was probably 4 seconds, and the bag of Pad C UW slipped out of my hand and hit the floor with a sound so soft it was almost merciful. Marigold's head turned. Her face did something I'll never forget. Not shock, not shame, just a flicker of irritation, like I'd interrupted something scheduled. Consuela had followed me up the stairs. She stood behind me now, and when I finally turned to her, her eyes were wet. "This isn't the first time," she said quietly. "I've been getting the children out of the house for 6 weeks, Mr. Whitfield. Piano lessons that don't exist. Sleepovers I invented. I couldn't let them see this. I couldn't let August see this. 6 weeks. My son had been eating dinner at a stranger's table for 6 weeks, so he wouldn't walk into what I'd just walked into. And I hadn't noticed a single thing, because I'd been too busy replacing a porch light that was never going to stay lit. In up short. She didn't look surprised to see me. She looked scared, and there's a difference between those two things that I didn't fully understand until that moment. 12 years Consuela Reyes had cleaned this house, twice a week, every week, and in all that time, she'd never once looked at me the way she looked at me now, like I was standing on a ledge, and she was deciding whether to tell me or let me fall. "Mr. Whitfield," she said, and her voice had that careful evenness people use when they're choosing every word, like it might explode in their hands. "Don't go home tonight." I laughed. I actually laughed, because the alternative was something I wasn't ready for. Standing there with pad thai going cold in a plastic bag. "Consuela, I am home. This is my house." She didn't laugh back. She glanced past me, toward the street, like she was checking whether we were alone. And then she said something that I've replayed in my head every night since. "There are papers, Mr. Whitfield, in the study, behind the Renwick file, in the bottom drawer. You need to see them before you see her. I want to tell you I asked the right question in the right order. I didn't. I asked her how long. I asked her who. I asked her the stupid, small questions a drowning man asks while the water's already at his chin." But Consuela shook her head, like none of that mattered anymore. Like I was asking about the color of the boat while it sank. "This isn't just him," she said, meaning the man, the one I still didn't have a name for. "It's money, Mr. Whitfield. Big money. I clean this house. I hear things. I see mail I'm not supposed to see. 6 months, maybe 7. There's been a man coming when you're at the office. Tall, always in a gray suit. They talk in the study with the door closed, but I've heard your name. Not like a husband's name, like a signature, like something they need. Something they need, not someone. Something. I asked her what she meant, and she looked at me with something close to pity, which might be the worst thing anyone has ever looked at me with. Mr. Whitfield, you co-signed something. Months ago. A loan, maybe an investment? I don't know exactly. I saw the papers when I was dusting. Your name, your signature, but numbers I never seen you talk about at breakfast. And there was another name, too. A company. I wrote it down because something felt wrong in my stomach. You understand? A person cleans a house long enough they know when a house has gone bad, even before the people living in it know it. She reached into her coat pocket and pressed a folded scrap of paper into my hand, her fingers cold against mine. Meridian Holt Partners, she said. That's the company. And the man in the gray suit, his name is Dean. Dean Ashworth. I stood there on my own porch, briefcase forgotten at my feet. The Thai food, already a joke I hadn't caught up to yet. And I understood, not all at once, but in pieces, like a bone setting wrong, that this wasn't simply a woman falling out of love with her husband. This was architecture. This was 22 years of trust being used as building material for something I hadn't been invited to see. My name wasn't just being betrayed. It was being borrowed, used, spent. Go somewhere safe tonight, Consuela said, already backing down the steps. Read the papers first, then decide what kind of man you're going to be tomorrow. Consuela didn't say another word that night. She didn't have to. 12 years of folded laundry and swept floors had bought her exactly enough loyalty to give me one sentence and take the rest to her grave if I let her. I told her to go home, that she hadn't seen me, and I meant it as a kindness. But I think we both understood it was also a mercy for me. I needed the house empty of witnesses for what came next. I want you to understand something about me before I tell you what I did. I spent 19 years as a forensic auditor for 2 different insurance conglomerates, chasing men smarter than Marigold's boyfriend ever was, men who thought spreadsheets couldn't talk. Spreadsheets always talk. People just stopped listening for them. My wife had spent a decade calling me boring at dinner parties, telling her sister I was married to my laptop, rolling her eyes when I mentioned audit trails. She never once considered that the man she found boring was the same man who could find a single falsified timestamp inside 400,000 lines of data without blinking. So, I didn't yell. I didn't confront her in the kitchen with wine glasses shaking in my hand like some movie husband. I went upstairs, sat down at my desk, and I opened a blank folder on my laptop titled, simply, Home Repairs. Nobody in this house had ever looked twice at that folder because nobody in this house had ever cared what I did with my evenings. Over the next 11 days, I built a case the way I'd been trained to build one, patiently, silently, without a single wasted motion. Bank statements that didn't match her stated hours at the office. A hotel loyalty account under a coupon email address I found because she'd once asked me to fix her printer and forgot to log out. Location pings buried in a shared family cloud account she didn't know was still syncing her phone. A man named Derek Alvin Pruitt, 34, a personal trainer with a leased BMW he couldn't actually afford, whose Venmo history told a story more honest than his Instagram ever would. I didn't confront Marigold with anger. I confronted her with paper. On a Thursday evening, I set a manila folder on the kitchen island, the same island where she used to tell me I never noticed anything. And I said one sentence. We need to talk about Derek before my lawyer does. I watched something collapse behind her eyes. The same practiced indifference I'd been living under for months, finally cracking wide open. She reached for anger first. They always do, accusing me of spying, of being paranoid, of ruining things. I let her finish. Then I slid the folder an inch closer and said, I'm not asking you anything. I'm telling you what happens next. What happened next was custody records amended within 3 weeks. Full physical custody, granted to me on the basis of a documented pattern of neglect and deception. What happened next was a joint account frozen the same day I filed. A house appraisal that favored me because I'd quietly refinanced 2 years earlier without telling her, thinking ahead the way boring men do. What happened next was Derek's employer receiving an anonymous but perfectly documented complaint about workplace conduct, and his fiancée, yes, fiancée, a detail Marigold had somehow never mentioned, receiving an envelope of her own. I didn't do any of it to be cruel. I did it because for 12 years, I'd let people mistake my quiet for weakness. And quiet men, when finally pushed, don't shout. We calculate. I meant it as a kindness, and it was also a coward's way out. I didn't want to hear the sentence yet. I wanted one more night of not knowing. One more night where I could climb into bed next to Marigold and pretend the porch light was just faulty wiring after all. She left. Her Corolla's tail lights swung out of the driveway, and I stood there alone in the dark for a long time, keys biting into my palm because my fist had closed around them without my permission. Then I did something I'm not proud of. I didn't go inside. I walked around the side of the house, past the rose bushes Marigold never watered, but insisted on keeping, and I looked through the gap in the den curtains that never quite closes all the way. 14 years in this house, and I know every flaw in it. Every place light leaks through when it shouldn't. The den was empty, TV off, but there was a glow coming from upstairs, from our bedroom window, and a shadow moving across it that wasn't Marigold's shape. Too broad in the shoulders, too tall. I want to tell you my mind went blank, but it didn't. It went sharp, the way it used to go sharp in depositions when a witness said something that didn't line up with the paper trail. I started cataloging. The car that wasn't in the driveway, which meant it was parked somewhere else. Maybe the Henderson Street 2 blocks over. The one place you can leave a car overnight without a neighbor asking questions. The dog 3 houses down that hadn't barked, which meant whoever this was had been coming around long enough that even the dog had stopped caring. The porch bulb. I went back to my car instead of walking through my own front door. I sat in the driver's seat with the engine off, and I called my brother-in-law, Desmond, not because I needed advice, but because I needed to hear my own voice say the words out loud to see if they'd hold their shape. I think Marigold's got someone in the house, I said, and Desmond went quiet on the other end in a way that told me more than any answer could have. That silence had guilt in it. Desmond knew something. Desmond had maybe known for a while. Walt, he finally said, you should come stay at our place tonight. That's not what an innocent man says. An innocent man says, what are you talking about? You're crazy. Go home and ask her. Desmond said, come stay at our place, like he'd already rehearsed it, like this conversation had a script, and he'd been handed his lines weeks ago and told to wait for his cue. I hung up on him. I don't remember deciding to hang up. My thumb just did it. I sat there another 20 minutes watching that upstairs window, watching the shadow pass back and forth, once, twice, a third time, like someone pacing, like someone nervous, like someone who knew a car had pulled into the driveway and then heard it leave again and was trying to decide what that meant. At one point, the shadow stopped at the glass entirely, and I swear to you, for 3 or 4 seconds, it just stood there, looking down, looking at exactly where I was parked. I put my car in reverse. Not because I was scared, because I needed proof before I needed a confrontation. And a man who walks in swinging on instinct alone is a man who loses in court and loses at home. 29 years in forensic accounting teaches you that the first thing you feel is never the thing you can prove. I drove 3 streets over and parked in front of the Hendersons' house, and there it was. A gray Tahoe I didn't recognize, cooling engine ticking in the November air. 6 months. That's how long it's taken for this house to feel like mine again. Not a museum of what I lost, but a place where 2 kids still live and laugh and slam doors when they're mad at me for saying no to a second dessert. Normal doors, slammed for normal reasons. That's what I prayed for. On the nights I couldn't sleep, and somehow, God help me, I got it. Marigold and I finalized everything in March. I won't bore you with the legal details, the depositions, the way 12 years of marriage got reduced to line items on a spreadsheet. What matters is the kids. What matters is that I have them 4 nights a week now, and every other weekend. And I've learned to braid my daughter's hair badly enough that she laughs at me instead of crying, which feels like the same thing as healing. My son asked me last month why Mom doesn't live here anymore. I didn't lie to him. I told him grown-ups sometimes make choices that hurt other people, and that it wasn't his fault, and that I loved him more than I had words for. He nodded like that was enough, because kids are more forgiving than we deserve. And then he asked if we could get a dog. We got a dog. His name is Biscuit, and he sleeps at the foot of my son's bed every night. And some mornings I stand in the doorway and just watch them breathe, both of them. And I think about how close I came to missing this. I drove out to see Consuela in April, brought flowers, which felt inadequate, and an envelope, which felt worse, like I was trying to buy back a debt that money can't touch. She wouldn't take the money. She took my hand instead, held it the way you'd hold something fragile, and said, "I just didn't want you walking into that blind, Mr. Aldridge." 12 years of folded laundry and swept floors. And in the end, what she gave me was bigger than all of it combined. She gave me the truth before it was too late to matter. I don't know how you repay something like that. I'm still trying to figure it out. I think about that night on the porch more than I probably should. The keys in her hand. The fear in her eyes that I mistook for one terrible second as something else. I think about how easy it would have been for her to say nothing, to keep her head down, to let me walk into that house and find out on my own, weeks later, months later, after more of my life had been quietly stolen from me. She didn't have to say a word. She said one, and it changed everything. If there's anything I've learned from all this, it's that strength doesn't always look like shouting. Sometimes it looks like a woman standing on a porch in the cold, risking her job, risking everything, just to give a stranger's family one more chance. Sometimes it looks like a man driving away from the house he built, letting the truth find him instead of running from it forever. Quiet things, small things, but they hold the weight of everything that comes after. If this story meant something to you, if you've ever had someone in your life who told you a hard truth when it would have been easier to stay silent, stick around. There are more stories like this one coming, and I'd love to have you here for them. Subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.